what is the direction that the markets are likely to take from here, Rohit, given that most of the uncertainties that we were talking about all of last year, early this year, including budget, including Q3 earnings, including the India-US trade deal, and now finally last week, even the RBI Monetary Policy Committee meet out of the way. Overall, what is the direction that markets are expected to take from here?
Yeah, good morning, Kartik. I think markets are definitely in a very positive kind of mood, considering that the US-India trade deal has been finally signed, and a lot of products and items now attract zero duty. And I think the average tariff coming down from 50% to 18% is a big positive, for Indian exporting companies, specifically for sectors like textiles, pharma, chemicals, auto components. I think these are the sectors which are going to be in the focus, at least today. And I think looking at the Q3 earnings numbers, I think clearly one fact is very visible is that compared to quarter three, the earnings trajectory has been much better than what the street had expected. In fact, today also we are going to have a large set of companies coming out with their Q3 numbers. So I think the markets will continue to be more stock specific considering the number, the result season going on. But overall, the sentiment is good. I think clearly we now wait for the FIs to come in, because for a very long time we have seen the FIs, putting, a sell or maybe coming out of the Indian markets. But with this policy change, I think probably in the next couple of months, you could see a long stream of FI buying. And that definitely is positive for the Indian market. So net, I think we are structurally positive. We would say that sectors like automobiles, auto components, capital goods, exporting companies like textiles, pharma, that could be definitely be the bright spots, in the coming few weeks.
Avinash, I understand that, export-oriented companies are likely to be the stars, at least as far as the next quarter or so goes. But I want to draw your attention to the steel and aluminum space. And again, we are seeing that despite the clarification coming in that this sector continues to attract 50% tariff. In fact, that is something that US Trade Representative Jamison Greer has also confirmed, that 50% tariff on steel and aluminum continues to be intact. While it may not impact the entire export potential of the steel aluminum sector, because there is that clause 232, if I'm not mistaken, which is likely to impact about 18 to 20% of India's total exports to the US when it comes to this sector. But we are seeing some positive run-up even in stocks like Hindalco and Tata Steel as well as JSW Steel this morning. This 50% tariff, not scary news for them?
No, I think my guess is that this is the beginning of the US-India trade deal agreement. So maybe in the next couple of months or maybe in the next 1 or 2 quarters, there could be some further tinkering on the duties specifically for steel. And Kartik, I think if you look at the performance of these companies in quarter three, I think one good part is that metal prices have started inching up, whether it is aluminum, whether it is non-ferrous, whether it is ferrous. I think companies like Hindustan Zinc, typically Hindustan Copper, or for that reason Tata Steel, I would say that the structural story in these companies is pretty solid. Most of the negatives had already been built into the price, and I think investors should realize that definitely in the domestic market, the demand for metals is growing quite rapidly. The budget has also allocated a very large budget for the capital expenditure program this year. So net, yes, I think this is a small dampener, because markets were expecting that even on the steel sector, the duty could be reduced, so that could give them a big leeway in the export market. But otherwise, I think it's not something to panic about. I think you could find maybe a slower movement in these stocks, but definitely, I think structurally they appear to be quite positive.
Okay, structurally positive. What about the electronics technology space? And I'm talking about companies like BEL, and I'm also talking about companies like HAL, which are deep-rooted in India's defense story. But we are seeing that India is likely to purchase more defense equipment, more aircraft parts from the US. India is expected to buy more ICT also from the US. But again, we are seeing positive momentum here. I understand Dixon Tech, because it's making smartphones which will be exported to the US. But other sectors like other companies like HAL and BEL, are they likely to be positive going forward as well?
Yeah, I think Kartik, if you see the budget numbers, I think the allocation for defense has increased by about 20-21%.
Yeah.
And I think, despite the fact that India will be importing obviously a large percentage of the defense requirements from US, I think on the other hand, the government is encouraging the Make in India program. So I think simultaneously, wherever the Indian companies are not able to offer products which require, advanced technology, that could be imported. But otherwise, the Make in India program is proceeding quite well. We have been seeing that the government has been releasing more and more orders for Indian companies, especially for companies like BEL, HL, Bharat Dynamics, and even the shipping companies like Mazgaon Dock, Cochin Shipyard. So I think the mood is pretty solid. You need to give some time for these companies to actually show the numbers because order books are pretty healthy. But this is definitely a long gestation business. So I think investors should take a slightly longer term call. But yes, the mood is definitely positive for defense sector.
Okay, mood is positive for defense. What about pharma? Because pharma again is something which India's generic pharma story, and now of course with though pharma initially, if you remember, Avinash was kept out of the reciprocal tariff, but the fact that Donald Trump has also announced his own sort of TrumpRx.gov, their own generic pharma website where OTC drugs can be bought. Overall, with this trade deal, with the momentum of India-US trade tension thawing, trade talks moving in the right direction, agreement likely to be signed. Overall, pharma story for India also looks up from here.
Yeah, definitely, Kartik. See, US has always been a very large market for some select Indian pharma companies, and I think once this trade deal is signed up, a lot of certainty and a lot of stability and clarity now comes in the picture. For the last few weeks and months, there was a little bit of uncertainty, but now things have got cleared. Companies like Sun Pharma, Lupin, Torrent Pharma, or for that reason, Glenmark, companies which have got a large exposure. A company like Aurobindo Pharma, where we are quite positive. I think companies which have got a large exposure on the US markets and which have a very large generic pipeline obviously will benefit. But I think you'll have to wait for maybe a couple of quarters before we see the actual numbers shaping up because volumes as well as margins are definitely going to improve going forward.
All right. And finally, I also want to pick your mind on reliance on the entire energy pack because there is still that confusion that in fact there's a little bit of toss up which is visible politically when the commerce and industry minister is not giving much clarity on whether or not India is going to stop buying Russian oil, deflecting it in the direction of MEA has been completely mum on the issue as well. But overall in this entire energy play, given that now Venezuela is also in a few months if not weeks likely to get added to the overall energy mix, and India saying that it's going to decide commercially what is the best arrangement. Overall, as far as energy goes, what is the outlook from here on?
No, I think it looks pretty positive. I think oil prices are stable, and hopefully, if they remain stable, then I think players like Reliance, all the oil marketing companies could definitely be in a sweet spot. We are positive on Reliance. We believe that Reliance, according to some reports, has said that they are open to buying Venezuela oil. That will actually help them, monetize and strike upon the right opportunity to actually lessen their cost. And most importantly, all the oil marketing companies, Kartik, if you look at the automobile and the aviation sector, throughput is going to increase significantly. Both these sectors are growing rapidly. So I think companies like BPCL, HPCL, IOC, which all reported very strong numbers, I think this momentum will continue. And hopefully, if we have oil prices between 65 to $70 a barrel, that gives good flexibility for the GRMs to improve in the coming few months. So I think net we are positive on the oil marketing companies and Reliance at current times.
All right. So positive everywhere. Any sectors negative? How do you see the retail space? Is the retail space likely to be under some sort of, consolidation going ahead? Because there are going to be potentially cheaper American goods also coming into India, given that India has almost, reduced tariffs to nil and will reach that complete elimination path soon. Is there going to be some disruption in the retail space, or do you think it's actually good news even for India's retail sector?
No, I think overall we'll have to see how the onslaught of US goods comes in the Indian market. But I think players like V2 Retail, or for that reason, typically something like a Trend. If you see the numbers for quarter 3, they have been very solid. And my sense is that Indian customers are going to be picking and choosing the products based on the value addition and the value for money kind of concept. So I think it all depends on what kind of target segments are going to look at foreign US products and services. So I think we'll have to wait and watch, Kartik. I think you'll have to give in at least a quarter, maybe the January to March quarter, before we actually see these products in the market. But I'm not very much worried. Indian companies are very solidly positioned, and I think one should not be feeling panicky at this point of time.
And you started off by saying that FIIs are going to finally make that U-turn and come back towards India. Is that also going to take a quarter, or can we see FIIs coming back much sooner?
So I think it will take maybe 2 to 3 months. But Karthik, one thing is very clear: the valuations in the Indian market have corrected significantly. We have been seeing quarter 3 numbers, and we have been analyzing a lot of companies, from the broader markets. So I think it's a matter of time. I think they cannot ignore India, and I think looking at the valuation and the earnings growth, specifically for FY 27, my sense is that maybe April or May, could be a time where they could actually start moving in a big way.
Right, Avinash Gorakshakar, Head of Research, Profitmart Securities. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us with all this input on various sectors and stocks.